Well, it seems that wherever I go, I'm blessed with good friends. And they always seem to teach me something. Like the group I spent a very unusual night with 20 years ago.
Woo! Hey, man, those chicks in the Cutlass are coming back tonight, brother. And Seta is gonna be ready.
How nice!
Woo!
Jack Seta laughed out loud, swilled his beer, then did a little dance en route to the dumpster to take a leak. That's usually what our summer nights were made of back then. Chicks, beers, laughs. But that one summer night, 20 years ago, turned out to be different. Very different. Actually, it was an early morning in late August, the side of morning that's closer to night than day. We were all gathered in a bar parking lot beneath the neon sign. Tommy's Tavern on Broadview Road. Tommy had been serving us since we were sophomores, and for that, we were deeply indebted. After our rousing night of pirate-like drinking, tons of music, and lots of laughs, we formed an impromptu circle on the asphalt. Appropriate for the circle of friends who had formed a bond so tight over the last 4 years that what would follow tonight would be completely and bittersweetly natural. A group of huge-hearted 18-year-olds made up of jocks and dope smokers, music-loving Renaissance boys huddled together like racked billiards, about to be broken by the cue ball of fate. The next morning would find Dean Supan en route to South Bend, Indiana, Jimmy Hardy off to Bowling Green State University, the Spock twins deep into corn country with a pair of football scholarships, and my best friend Jack Seta, slated to hold the local fort now with a high-paying factory gig. Now, as for me and Kenny the Snake Snyder, the crack of dawn would force us to climb into my $25 Ford Comet and drive 600 miles west to a small college somewhere on the Mississippi River. A $25 car! Oh my God, we had faith. But after all, doesn't the story go that Peter was walking on water toward Jesus till he thought about what he was doing, looked down and fell? Thank God we never looked down. I don't exactly remember who started it that night in the parking lot. It could have been the Snake. He had seen enough tragedy in his short life to recognize reality when it was happening. Due to complications during childbirth our freshman year, his eldest sister became a vegetable and slowly died day by day in their family's back room. Kenny would read to her and play her Harry Chapin albums and try not to think of her teenage years when she rode fresh on the back of motorcycles without a helmet and sang Irish songs at family reunions in the summertime. I guess looking back on it tonight, Kenny's high school education had been a little different than the rest of ours. I think it was Kirk Roman. Kirk came up to me that night in the parking lot and we hugged goodbye, then he walked away. He was crying. I stood in shock for a moment, then I went after him. I turned him around, pulled him to me, and hugged him. He started bawling. I started laughing and crying all at the same time. Just then, Dean joined in. He tried to make light, but the truth and his tears wouldn't let him. He threw his arms around the pair of us and started sobbing like a tired old man. Next came Kenny. Moments like this were commonplace at his house. I always thought of his arms as kind of like the external manifestation of his young, scarred heart. They were compassionate. You could get lost inside of Kenny. The Spocks didn't want to cry that night, but, they had no choice. I remember Seta making fun of us from a short distance as he wiped away his tears, tinged with the promise of tomorrow. Tears did not come easy to Jack Seta. His parents split up when he was a little boy. He never said too much about his mom, but what he did say wasn't very good. We all figured she had to be a serious piece of work, though, because his old man got full custody of all 4 kids, and he made a living as a bookie. Jack got real quiet and was clinging to the circle. We were all crying. This big old handful of high school buddies standing out in front of a little white tavern. that used to be a house. How ironic, I thought. We subconsciously sought out a place where 20 years earlier, a little girl afraid of the storm would have jumped into her parents' bed. I mean, just as this home turned into a bar, we were boys turning into older boys, getting ready to turn into men. And on some level, beneath that clear Ohio night sky in 1978, we all knew it. We were scared, drunk, excited, embarrassed, and filled with the energy that only true faith can bring. You know the kind of energy I'm talking about, man? When you're so deep in the pocket, you can confidently fly by the seat of your pants without even thinking. It had to be faith, boy, because we were going. We were all leaving in the morning, no matter what we were leaving behind. In 2 days, the Spock boys would be at their respected schools, despite knowing that now with them out of the house, no one would be talking to their mother, since their exit only left their dad, and he never did. This morning would bring the day that Kirk Roman's mom had probably been fearing for the last 4 years. With Kirk in Wisconsin, she and her home would now constantly be filled with the silence that her only child had finally graduated high school, and her husband hadn't lived long enough to see it. Still Roman, a boy heavy with the weight of having been the man, was gonna fly. He had dreams. He had faith. And the harder he cried those parking lot tears, the lighter his spirit got. Old Kenny was ready. Even at a ripe 18 years, he knew Earth time was finite. I remember he held his beer around his neck and threw his arm around me, telling me it was gonna be great, man! Everything was gonna be great! As for me, I'd be in some dormitory room in Quincy, Illinois 48 hours from now, writing my cancer-ridden mother a letter instead of kissing her goodnight on the forehead. I had faith. Faith that I would make it in college. Faith that my drunken drive home tonight would be a protected walk in the park. I'll tell you what, I even had faith that both my folks would make it out for Parents' Weekend in October. They didn't make it. As a matter of fact, Parents' Weekend was when I got the call to come back home. The neon light went dark. We did a round of handshakes, got in our cars, and left. How do we lose faith? When do we lose faith? How can we just keep it? It's raining today, 20 years later. Maybe I'll go outside and stand in it and pray that the raindrops turn into tears. Hopeful tears of pure faith that will fill me up again. Tears cried by a small group of friends in a parking lot from somewhere back in time.